So if you're starting a business and you're writing a formal business plan, or even if you already have a business and you're writing a formal business plan, what are some of the main financial statements you're going to want to have in that business plan? Well, for starters, if it's a startup that doesn't really exist already, those financial statements are going to be based on projections. Whereas if it's a business that's already been operating for multiple years, then those financial statements are also going to have projections, but they're more based on actual factual reporting of your financials from your business. But so what are those main statements? Well, I write formal business plans as part of my business. I do that quite regularly for different industries. And so I write those financial statements and make those projections. And I'm just going to go over some of the most common statements that you will see on those formal business plans. So for starters, you're probably going to want to have startup cost projections. So what is the business going to cost to start up, or the business project? So probably having an itemized list of what those startup costs are going to be and then their expected amounts. That's really common, especially for startups. And then for existing businesses that are maybe making a business plan for a specific project. Secondly, you might want a statement for a source of funding. Okay, you've determined your startup cost. How are you going to cover those? Are those through owner loans? Are those through business loans? Are you getting investors, grants? You'll want to show where that source of funding is. The next type of statement that you'll probably have on a formal business plan, this is one of the most common ones for sure, would be a statement of cash flows. And now when I write a formal business plan, I'll have a statement of cash flows typically for a year at a time, and I'll do 3 years, and then at the end I'll do a 3-year summary. And that statement of cash flows basically is a statement of the flow of cash. It's kind of self-explanatory. It's just looking at the money coming in and the money going out of a business. And this financial statement is a bit different than the one I'll talk about coming up here, which is an income statement, because a statement of cash flows just looks at the movement of money. Not all money coming in is sales revenue, and not all money going out is expenses. Just for example, you might have returns on sales. So money is going out. Those aren't necessarily expenses. Those are more like a reduction in your sales revenue. Or you might have to pay like a security deposit for the commercial space that you're renting, and that deposit is refundable. So it's money going out, but it's not classified as an expense. So statement of cash flows are really important, especially when you're presenting your formal business plan to lenders, because they want to make sure that you're not going to run into issues with cash flows and you just run out of money after 6 months or 14 months into your business. So very important to have that on a formal business plan. The next statement that's really important is an income statement, which is kind of similar to the statement of cash flows, but it's looking specifically at revenue and expenses. So there are some differences there between the two. But basically with this income statement, it's going to be, for a year or a month or a quarter. A year is pretty common. And at the top, it's going to show all your revenue. So all your sales revenue for the business. And then underneath that, it's going to have all the business expenses. So the example that I mentioned with like a security deposit, that will show up in your statement of cash flows because it's money moving out, but it won't show up on your income statement because it's not an expense. And even when you get that deposit back, it's not income. It's money coming in, but it's not like revenue from sales. Another example would be depreciation, where if you have assets in your business that are depreciating, that's considered an expense, but there's no actual movement of money. So that depreciation expense will show up on your income statement, but it won't show up on your statement of cash flows. Another common financial statement on a formal business plan would be a balance sheet. And the balance sheet is just a snapshot at any given point that shows the assets and the liabilities of a company. So assets being, maybe cash that you have, savings, assets like, equipment and vehicles and stuff like that. And then liabilities would be, money that you're owing, accounts payable. Maybe you're in debt to your landlord and you're owing rent. Maybe you took out a business loan and you're still owing money on that business loan. Those would be the main sections in a balance sheet. And then you also have shareholders' equity, which basically just shows, how much ownership, how much equity belongs to the owner, was input by the owner or other sources like shareholders or grants or something like that. So that's another important financial statement on many business plans. I've made them before where they didn't really need a balance sheet, but it is pretty common. So those are the most common financial statements on a formal business plan. But you might also see some other ones like a depreciation or amortization schedule for assets, just to show how much they're depreciating every year. You might also see what's called a break-even analysis, which is just looking at how many sales a company has to make in order to break even to cover their fixed costs and their variable costs. And you might also see financial statements that are just looking at financial ratios like debt service ratios. So very much depends on the industry, the business, and who's going to be looking at the formal business plan. Every formal business plan is different, but those are some of the most common financial statements to be included on one of those formal business plans. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, you can just leave them in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked it, and feel free to subscribe to the channel and check out my other videos on YouTube, where I have currently over 100 covering business management and business startup topics.